Her dad loves to railroad, but what happens when he tries to railroad a brick wall? Let's throw another log on the fire. So last time, my cousin and I were captured by the big bad evil guy, Vlad the Impaler, to be forced into participating in his Battle Royale zombie games, inspired by the Hunger Games, for his entertainment. However, I guess my dad wanted to get some roleplay in before the inevitable so Vlad could get to know us, or something. Which leads us to today's tale. We were carted off to jail with a bunch of other prisoners, and all the half-blooded ones, like half-elves, were taken away for immediate torture/execution, which was kind of racist of my dad, I think. But my half-elf character was spontaneously spared when Vlad the Impaler's young adult daughter wandered into the jail to pick a prisoner to be her new human pet. She pointed at my character and begged her dad to let her pick me as her pet until he finally relented, and I was collared up and taken away on a leash. The party split here, and for the rest of the story, while I'm describing what happened with my cousin, my character was off being forced to drink water out of a dog food bowl and being made to sleep on the ground of the daughter's bedroom. Very dehumanizing, and I have no idea why my dad chose for this to happen to me. So after I was dragged away like a literal dog, Vlad himself combed through the jail cell, demanding that the person who killed all his men, aka my cousin, to identify himself. My cousin is very proud, so he didn't hesitate to step forward. There was some chit-chat before my cousin tried to assert dominance by casting the command spell and telling Vlad to flee. Vlad instantly passed his saving throw and burst into peals of consenting laughter that my cousin would even try this, and then invited my cousin to step out of the cell and join him for lunch. So this is where the problem starts. Much like my last story, my dad is near incapable of straying away from his plans for a session. He has no qualms about railroading his players into submission, which, when mixed with the unparalleled stubbornness of my cousin, is a recipe for absolute disaster. So Vlad leads my cousin into the dining hall where a huge feast is prepared, because my dad treats my cousin's characters with more basic human respect than mine, I guess. The dining hall overlooks a big courtyard where Vlad's men are constantly dropping the half-blooded prisoners onto gigantic spikes while they scream and beg for mercy as Vlad's entertainment for that afternoon. Vlad sits down and asks my cousin to sit. My cousin refuses. Vlad insists and starts going into some spiel about respect or whatever, and then asks my cousin to sit again. My cousin, once again, refuses. Vlad calls his men to force my cousin into his chair to eat lunch, and my dad tells my cousin to roll a strength saving throw, which he loses, so he's promptly shoved in the chair. After some evil bad guy monologue about his plans to put us in the zombie games the next day, Vlad starts eating and tells my cousin to eat. No surprise, my cousin refuses to do this too. Out of character, my dad was getting visibly frustrated at my cousin's obstinance, and this is when I realized that my dad was entirely willing to hold up this whole game until my cousin did what he wanted. In defense of my cousin's character, this man literally kidnapped him and a whole village, was murdering people for fun, and was now giving him orders. After a lot of back and forth, instead of just moving on with the story, Vlad gets up from his chair, unsheaths his sword and says, "This is your last chance. I won't ask again. Eat." My cousin tells the guy a colorful way of saying no, and then Vlad immediately attacks my cousin. It was like a bomb went off because my cousin flipped a bunch of papers off the table and got up and started yelling at my dad about how this whole thing was stupid and called him out as a jerk. My dad raised his voice back and said that my cousin should have just listened the first time and maybe this wouldn't have happened. I just clammed up and watched this chaos play out, not saying a word. After about 10 minutes of yelling, arguing, and many choice words, my dad screamed in frustration before throwing a D&D book across the room. My cousin said the whole thing was stupid, and my dad finally relented, and he just shouted, "Fine," and then retconned the entire encounter. After that, we just kinda sped through to the main event, but the tension never really subsided. This is just some bad D&D. One player has been basically written off as a pet slave, while the other player and DM are yelling back and forth. Games should never get to a point where it is a screaming match. If it gets to that point, then someone has definitely misread the room and is trying to force what they want on others. Player agency needs to exist in a D&D game, and not an imaginary version of it. What do you all think about this situation?